Before I get started, I want to give a shout out to all of the paying members of my Patreon channel. Your support is necessary, and without you, none of this is possible. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, Cash App and PayPal are available. Just be sure to let me know in the For section if it's okay for me to thank you publicly, or else I'll assume you want to remain anonymous. So today I want to talk about the article that you see here. It's from the New York Post, and it says, "The rise of the manosphere divorce. Meet the women ditching their Joe Rogan and clavicular, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, influenced husbands." And it's written by a woman named Kyra Breslin. I'm not familiar with Miss Kyra Breslin's work, but I am familiar with the manosphere, or the red pill, or the men's sector of social media. And the reason why I'm talking about it is because the manosphere, or men's content, is something that has recently come into the mainstream. And a lot of people are under the impression that it has somehow influenced the minds of men, that it has somehow, I guess you can say, brainwashed men or changed men. Now, my contention is that this is nothing new, that men have always had these thoughts, feelings, and ideas. It's just that we never had a platform to express ourselves, okay? And that we often had to suffer these frustrations alone, you know. And so, but the manosphere has come along thanks to social media, which has given men a platform to where they no longer have to go through the corporate media structure. They can simply, turn on their computer, turn on their phone, and express what they're experiencing in today in this post-feminist, misandrist world. But with that said, let's get to the article.
All right, here's the article from the New York Post. Exclusive, the rise of the manosphere divorce. Meet the women ditching their Joe Rogan and clavicular-influenced husbands. From toxic masculinity podcasts to divorce court, manosphere ideologies are leaving a trail of broken marriages, according to legal experts.
What? So right there, I want you to catch that, because this is important to note. This is not a study. This is not a survey. There's no scientific data gathering here. This is just a journalist who's been talking to some attorneys, and according to the attorneys that she spoke to, the manosphere is the reason for divorce. So she's going off of her personal experience, or the personal experiences of attorneys. And when I hear people talk about what they see or what they know, and they use that as the evidence of something rising, I always say personal experiences are not counterbalances, because they're personal. It's what you see in your world, and the world of the average person is small. It's not a sample size or reflection of the population of a whole. So I say all that to say, this is just a conjecture of a woman or a journalist who says she spoke to attorneys.
It starts with Anni Kim's story. Her husband made an off-color comment about changing diapers being a woman's job. She thought he was joking, but it was just the beginning. She believes he got pulled into the manosphere. Kim was working long shifts as a travel nurse during COVID, supporting him through his doctor's residency. But as she got busier, the comments piled up.
And that right there is another thing I want to talk about. And he's going to mention this later, but I also want you to understand this is a one-side testimony of what's going on, okay? This is the woman's perspective. And one of the things that I've often learned, and I've heard this said before, there are three sides to the truth. There's her story, his story, and what actually happened. So we're not getting his interpretation. And the fact that she said something about her husband saying changing diapers is a woman's job, that sounds like something out of a 1960s sitcom, okay? It's almost cartoonish, okay? We don't really know definitively why this woman got divorced, but she's just blaming the manosphere, okay? So just understand this is her perspective alone. This isn't scientific.
Stuff about her looks, wives belonging in the kitchen, and how lucky she was to have him. It was a huge switch in his character, she said. I remember thinking, I don't even know who you are. She thinks it came from his career stress and listening to podcasts like Joe Rogan. He also started obsessing over his appearance, grooming kits, dieting, running.
Again, this sounds cartoonish. This sounds like, somebody who was reading the comment section somewhere and created this whole persona of who her husband is. Again, I don't get this. This whole thing with clavicular, and he does focus on his appearance, but he more or less has an audience of younger men. You're talking about teenage boys and guys in their early 20s. Married men in their 30s aren't listening to clavicular, okay? So I don't believe that's true at all. I think this journalist may be capping, but more importantly, the woman that she's talking to may be capping. And again, this isn't based on any scientific data.
Years of marriage, she asked for divorce. He supposedly replied, "I'm a white surgeon. You're really gonna leave me?"
Stop the cap.
Now the BS meter really kicks up. Now I understand he might say something like, "Hey, I'm a surgeon," but the fact that she threw in white surgeon, that's supposed to bring in some type of racial element, that he might be somewhat of a YT supremacist. It's too sensational for me to believe. And if you look at the photos, this is an interracial, or was an intraracial relationship. She looks to be some type of, even though she's had plastic surgery and somewhat butchered her face, she looks to be of Asian descent. But according to her, he said he's a white surgeon. Now he may have said, "Hey, I'm a surgeon. Why are you leaving me?" But like I said, the racial component, I don't believe he said that.
He wanted a traditional housewife, even though she was working full-time and supporting him. She got tired of takeout lectures when she was exhausted. The article says stories like hers are becoming more common, especially in the last year or so. Divorce lawyers are seeing it. No one admits they're influenced by the manosphere. They just say they want respect or different values now.
Now that I believe. Like I said, the public wants you to believe that men are being brainwashed, that they're forced to think this way by watching certain content. No. Men are attracted to the manosphere because they're speaking on the topics for which we're already having frustrations. So what I'm saying is that these problems, these ideas, or these feelings have already resided within the minds and hearts of men. The manosphere is just articulating what is already there. Okay? They're not coming up with anything new. They're not putting these thoughts in our heads. They were there for a very long time.
Experts point to influencers like Sneeko, Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit, and looks-maxing guy Clavicular pushing alpha male ideas, traditional gender roles, and extreme self-improvement. Therapists say it's a perfect storm for insecure, isolated guys.
You can't be serious.
Now you see the ad hominem attack? Insecure, isolated guys. That's what it's for. Those are the only men that are having problems. We're talking about a married man. And as you can see from her photos, she's a somewhat attractive woman, especially in her early photos before she did all the plastic surgery. So this isn't an isolated guy. This is a married man. Okay? And he has to be somewhat attractive. As you can see, he's much taller than her because she was supporting him while he was going through medical school. Okay? An insecure, ugly guy is not going to get an attractive woman to support him through medical school. He has to be somewhat attractive. He has to be somewhat gregarious. He can't be isolated. He has to have a little charisma for a woman to do that for him. So I don't believe this crap about therapists saying it's about insecure, isolated guys. And here's another thing you have to understand. The therapy field is being dominated by women. And the mindset you have in therapy is that they always come from the position that the man is always at fault. Okay? And I do think that therapy is important, but it's right to find the right therapist, as most therapists have misandrous feminist points of view. And so when they say it's for men who are isolated and insecure, that's dismissive.
The content gives them someone to blame and makes them super confident in those beliefs. Other women in the piece describe similar shifts. Husbands glued to reels, getting controlling, obsessed with status, and pushing for trad wife dynamics while the women were out earning or supporting them. One woman said her husband spent thousands on high value.
This is ridiculous. Husbands glued to reels, getting controlling, obsessed with status, and pushing for trad wives dynamics while the women were out earning or supporting them? No. No, no, I don't believe that. Married men are looking at reels and getting brainwashed. And who are all these men that are being supported by women? So on one hand, you want to say that the manosphere appeals to men who can't get girls, but then you're saying the manosphere is affecting men who do have wives. Which argument do you want to make? Either they're incels or they're married men. Which one? You can't be isolated and married at the same time. You can't have the inability to get a woman and married at the same time. So which demographic are you blaming? Which demographic of men are you blaming?
You man coaches instead of real therapy, and it turned him cold, judging their relationship like an investment. The piece ends noting how these men often spiral instead of facing their own issues. That's the main part. It's a pretty one-sided take, framing the whole manosphere as toxic.
And there it is. It's a one-sided take. You don't get the man's perspective in this article. You're relying the perspective of this woman. Here she is. And you see, she was very cute. And that's her somewhat much taller husband. And as you can see there, she does something to her face. I don't know why. But again, I want to keep emphasizing the fact that this was not done in a scientific survey. Okay? This is one woman's perspective written by another woman who said she talked to attorneys, who then talked to some therapists who obviously have some misandrous points of view. Now, I will say this though. That portion where it talks about respect, about these men wanting respect, I can attest to that is very much true. That the manosphere has risen the collective self-esteem of men. And so here you have a scenario where you have a man who was being supported by his wife while he became a surgeon. He becomes a surgeon, okay? Now, when you're talking about a woman who is a breadwinner or supporter, that comes with a domineering personality. That comes with a masculine personality, because it's not natural or feminine for a woman to want to go out and provide for a man. That's something a man would do for a woman. Okay, so it makes me wonder, what was her disposition or mindset in regards to men? How was she talking to her husband? Because if you're talking about a man who goes out and becomes accomplished, he's a surgeon. So now he's a man who makes a great deal of money. So now he's a man that has a position of authority on his job, which means he has people that are under him. Okay, he's respected by his peers. He's respected by other men. He's respected by his subordinates. And every day people call him doctor. Every day people look to him for instruction and leadership. His patients admire him. His subordinates admire him. And they probably compliment him on his work. And he's got all of these things going on with him, and on top of making a lot of money. But then he might be coming home and dealing with a combative, domineering woman who wants to keep on working, even though he now has an income that can sustain her, but she doesn't want to give up her job. Okay, and speaking from experience, when you're a man who becomes accomplished, it's you no longer want to deal with domineering women. You no longer want to negotiate with a combative woman. You no longer want to walk around on eggshells, fearful that you might say the wrong thing that will set her off. Because it's hard to have admiration on your job every day, then come home to a woman that looks at you as if you're nothing. Okay, and you're going to say to yourself, why am I getting admiration from strangers when I'm coming home to a woman who doesn't respect me, or I'm dealing with a woman who doesn't respect me? And that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm reading in between the lines of this article. She sounds like a woman, I'm just guessing, that didn't respect her husband. And if that's not the case with them particularly, I do believe that to be the case generally. Dr. T.S. Johnson talks about the first time he heard Kevin Samuels. It was the first time that he heard anyone talk about men having value. That the way we've been treated, especially in the Black community where you have a gynocracy, isn't normal. It's not normal for women to overtalk men, to disrespect men, to cuss them out. It's not normal for a man to negotiate every decision he makes with a woman. And so, to wrap that up in one argument, you're not going to have a man leave his job where he's in complete control and come home to where he has to negotiate. That's just not realistic. And so that part of the aspect of the article, I do believe that men who follow the manosphere are just looking for respect. They're tired of being bossed around, and they're tired of being, run over, so to say. But anyway, that's my take on the issue. What do you have to say? Leave a comment in the comment section and let's have a conversation.
How am I spending my Friday? Some jerk chicken with rice seasoned, red beans and some bread. Got some red wine over here. And I'm watching Layman's Journal on YouTube. Shout out to the brother Layman. Check him out. I'll leave the link in the description. It's your boy Calvin King. And this is how I'm enjoying my Friday.